The chamber of the Galactic Tribunal was built for spectacle, not diplomacy. It stretched like a cathedral of steel and light, walls studded with shifting holograms that replayed the Empire's greatest victories. Rows of alien dignitaries sat in balconies stacked to the ceiling, their faces lit by the shimmer of war feeds and propaganda loops. At the center rose a circular platform of polished obsidian, a stage meant for humiliation. Today, it was humanity's turn. A translucent hollow fabric spread across the chamber, projecting footage of human soldiers in their crude battle dress, helmets dented, rifles clutched like relics of a forgotten age. The aliens laughed. Their laughter was not the light chuckle of amusement, but the guttural, braying noise of creatures convinced of superiority. Some slapped their scaled thighs. Others hissed approvingly, spines rattling like chimes. "Observe the primates," declared High Marshal Wiesel, a towering reptilian whose skin glistened with a lacquer of ceremonial oils. His voice thundered across the hall, amplified by the tribunal's walls. They call themselves warriors. Yet here they are, firing chunks of metal propelled by combustion, antiquated sticks that belch fire. The hologram replayed a clip of a human squad crouched in mud, rifles cracking against a tide of chitinous enemies. Plasma bolts streaked over their heads. The humans ducked, breathed, then fired in unison, simple, mechanical, unimpressive. The aliens roared again, louder, filling the chamber with derision. "They still pull a trigger," scoffed a bird-like dignitary, wings fluttering as though swatting away the absurdity. No neural links, no quantum targeting, no elegance, merely click. Bang! Another chimed in mockingly, as laughter rolled like thunder. Screens shifted again, this time showing the sleek weapons of the Empire. Plasma arcs guided by thought, drones faster than sound, cannons that could shatter moons. The comparison was grotesquely uneven, engineered to ridicule. "Mark this day," Marshal Wiesel continued. "Today we prove before the galaxy that humanity's shooters are not warriors, but relics, museums with lungs. The proving ground will strip their illusions. Their rifles will fall silent, and their myth of ferocity will end." Applause reverberated, claws on metal, wings against air, tendrils slapping moistly in delight. Then, as the laughter began to wane, the chamber doors opened with the softest hiss. At first, few noticed. One human among thousands of alien throats hardly drew attention. But silence is more commanding than noise. The man walked without hurry, without guard, his boots echoing on the obsidian floor as though each step tested the patience of the universe. He was unremarkable by design. Plain black suit, pressed but not flashy. Hair swept back, peppered with gray at the temples. His face was cut in lines that suggested weariness more than vanity, the sort of countenance that could vanish into any crowd. Yet he carried himself like a blade sheathed in velvet, hidden but undeniable. Some aliens sneered, assuming this was humanity's envoy. Others ignored him. Only a few felt their scales prickle, though they could not explain why. The man stopped at the center platform, precisely where Marshal Wiesel had been pointing at the holograms. He waited, hands folded loosely in front of him, as if this were an unremarkable meeting at a tea house rather than a tribunal of mockery. "Identify yourself," Wiesel barked, his throat sacs swelling with disdain. The man inclined his head. His voice, when it came, was soft, polished with courtesy, yet carried to the rafters. "I am here as an observer. I was told the galaxy wished to understand human shooters." The chamber chuckled. "And who are you to teach us? A relic soldier? A trigger squeezer?" The man's lips curved in what might have been the faintest smile, though it never reached his eyes. "You may call me an enthusiast of precision." The words landed oddly, neither boastful nor defensive, just factual. Marshal Wiesel snorted, displaying rows of diamond teeth. "You arrive to defend the antiquity of your species' sticks?" The man's gaze lifted to the massive hologram, still replaying humans firing rifles. For a long moment he simply watched, as if studying the rhythm of breath, the squeeze of the finger, the arc of recoil. Then he spoke with a calmness that chilled those who truly listened. Where I come from, patience is not weakness. It is how one learns the exact moment when a heart beats and when it stops. A ripple moved through the balconies. The words were not shouted, but they slid beneath scales and feathers and hides like cold metal against skin. Some aliens frowned. Others shifted uneasily. Wiesel recovered quickly, laughter booming to drown the subtle tension. Ah, you mistake us, little relic. This is no debate. You are here to be demonstrated against. Tomorrow, your kind faces the proving ground. Against our finest. Against technology centuries beyond your sparks. The human inclined his head, as though acknowledging an invitation to dinner. That will be most enlightening. You jest. On the contrary, the man replied. I look forward to learning how your weapons sing when they are frightened. This time, the ripple became a stir. Murmurs rose in the balconies. Some aliens laughed nervously, unsure if it was bravado or madness. A few stared at the man's hands, steady as stone, and felt unease coil in their gut. The tribunal attempted to steer the spectacle forward. More holograms were displayed, each ridiculing human combat. But the laughter rang thinner now, forced. The presence of the man at the center had altered something imperceptible yet profound, as if a shadow had stretched across the chamber, though no light had changed. A scholar of the insectoid races leaned toward her companion, mandibles twitching. Does he not remind you of something? Of what? Of silence before the strike. The companion clicked irritably, dismissing the thought, but kept glancing back at the man anyway. For his part, the human remained utterly polite. He listened to speeches. He even clapped once, softly, when a particularly elaborate hologram showed a plasma beam slicing through mountains. His manners were impeccable, his composure unbroken. And yet, when his eyes lifted toward the balcony where the highest officials sat, those who dared meet his gaze felt as if crosshairs had aligned on them. There was no malice in his stare, no heat of anger. Just inevitability, cold and patient, the look of a hunter watching prey that had not yet realized the trap. The tribunal concluded with a flourish. Tomorrow, the proving ground. Humanity's shooters against the Empire's finest. An exhibition meant to mock, to crush pride. Aliens cheered, stamping, screeching. The chamber vibrated with their certainty. The man simply turned, adjusting the cuff of his suit with absent precision, and began to walk out the way he came. A small alien attendant, hardly more than a clerk, dared to approach as he passed. Its voice was a whisper. Sir, forgive impertinence. Do you truly intend to face them? Alone. The man paused. He looked down at the creature, eyes calm, voice gentle as a teacher's. Alone. He almost chuckled, though it was softer, sadder. No one is ever alone, my friend. Not when the shot is waiting. The clerk blinked, puzzled. But by the time it tried to ask, the man was already gone, his footsteps fading into silence that somehow carried more weight than the laughter that had preceded him. The chamber remained loud, filled with alien boasts and jeers. Yet beneath it all, unease festered. Not one of them could forget the human's words, or the feeling, fleeting but sharp, that the galaxy had just welcomed a predator who did not need to roar. And as the balcony emptied, Marshal Wiesel muttered to his aides with forced confidence, though his throat felt dry. Tomorrow, the myth of human shooters ends. Far down the corridor, the man in black adjusted the strap of a case slung across his back, long and narrow, shaped like something that once changed the fate of empires with a single trigger pull. He whispered to no one in particular, words swallowed by the corridor's shadows. They asked to see a shooter. They will. The proving grounds were carved into the bones of a dead world. Once, the planet had been lush, filled with oceans and forests, but the Empire had mined it hollow, scorched its crust, and declared it a place fit only for contests of domination. Now it was a hollow bowl of ash and blackened stone, ringed with towers that speared into the poisoned sky. Shields arced overhead, shimmering in blue fire, trapping the atmosphere within the arena like an insect in glass. Every seat of the Grand Colosseum was filled. Aliens of countless species jostled for view, their voices layered into a roar that shook the steel ribcage of the arena. Holoscreens floated above, broadcasting the spectacle across 100 sectors. From a central dais, High Marshal Wiesel addressed the galaxy, his scaled body resplendent in crimson armor, throat sacs swelling with pride. "Behold the proving grounds," he declared, claws spread, "where strength unmasks fraud, and myths are burned in plasma fire. Today, humanity's shooters are judged. Today, their farce is ended." The roar of approval thundered. Dignitaries leaned forward eagerly. Merchants placed bets in hushed tones. Somewhere in the shadows of the balconies, a nervous clerk remembered a soft human voice saying patience is how you wait for a heartbeat to stop. On the obsidian floor of the arena, gates groaned open. From one side marched the Empire's chosen champions, towering insectoid sharpshooters, armored reptilian gunners, avian scouts armed with plasma arcs. They gleamed with weapons grown from the height of technology, rifles that connected to their neural spines, drones that hovered like swarms of metal wasps. They moved with swagger, heads high, confident in their inevitable triumph. From the opposite gate walked the humans. The crowd laughed at the sight. There were only 7 of them, clad in drab uniforms of canvas and Kevlar. No gleaming armor, no luminous circuitry. Just boots caked with dust and rifles slung casually over their shoulders, weapons that seemed almost embarrassing in their simplicity. They did not strut. They did not wave. They simply walked, steady and unhurried, as if the noise of 1,000 alien throats were no more distracting than rain on a roof. Among them was the man in black. He stood out not for splendor, but for restraint. His suit was the same as yesterday, unmarked by dust. The case he carried now rested in his hands, long and narrow, its weight balanced as though it belonged there more than he did. When they reached the center, he set it down, knelt, and began to unfasten the latches. The announcer bellowed, "Human shooters, prepare yourselves. The contest begins when the signal fires. Victory is simple. Survive until surrender or extinction." The crowd laughed at that. Survive? Against plasma and drones? It would be a slaughter. The humans said nothing. One woman checked her rifle sights, adjusting with quiet efficiency. Another wiped her brow, then smiled faintly as though remembering something far away. The man in black assembled his weapon piece by piece. Barrel, stock, scope, bolt. His hands moved with a precision too practiced to be hurried. He hummed under his breath, an old earth tune that no alien ear could place. When he was finished, the sniper rifle lay in his lap like a sleeping dragon. Marshal Wiesel raised his claw. A flare shot into the sky, bursting in sparks of green. The signal. The proving grounds ignited. Plasma fire screamed across the arena. The alien sharpshooters unleashed torrents of light, the air boiling with energy. Drones swarmed upward, sensors locking onto the human heat signatures. The ground itself shuddered as sonic cannons fired, pulverizing rock into dust. And the humans disappeared. Not vanished, moved. They dropped low, melted into cover, weaving between jagged stone outcroppings, as if they'd been here 100 times before. Plasma bolts struck empty ground, searing craters into black stone. The crowd howled with laughter. Look at them crawl. Look at them scurry like vermin. Then came the crack. It was small compared to the roar of plasma. A sound too simple, too clean. One alien champion, an insectoid with 6 eyes and a plasma lance, jerked backward mid-stride. A hole the size of a coin appeared clean between his upper mandibles. He collapsed without a cry. The laughter faltered. Another crack. A reptilian gunner fell, throat punched open by invisible force. His plasma cannon discharged wildly into the dirt before sputtering out. The drones whirred, searching for the source. The humans moved like shadows, rifles lifting and settling with quiet rhythm. In the viewing balconies, dignitaries leaned forward, frowns spreading. "What was that?" hissed a feathered envoy. "They fired something unseen." "Where from?" The holoscreens rewound, enhanced, magnified. The crowd gasped as the feed locked onto the man in black. He lay prone on a ridge of stone, rifle pressed to his shoulder, one eye behind the scope, the other calm and closed. He exhaled, squeezed, and another alien fell before the camera's gaze could even center on the target. Marshal Wiesel roared for composure. Coincidence. Luck. Swarm them. The alien forces pressed harder, plasma saturating the air in rivers of green fire. Rocks shattered, dust choked the ground, but the man in black did not move faster. He moved slower, breathing between blasts, counting heartbeats, watching movements before they happened. His voice, faint, reached the humans nearest him. Patience. Let them waste breath. The woman to his left smiled, steadying her rifle. Another crack. Another body fell. The crowd no longer laughed. Their voices turned to murmurs, then to silence. It was not the noise of defeat, it was the noise of realization, when a joke becomes something else entirely. A drone finally spotted him. Alarms blared. Targeting beams converged. Plasma surged toward his ridge in a curtain of fire. The rock face collapsed, dust engulfing his body. For a heartbeat, the aliens cheered. At last, the threat undone. Then the dust cleared, and he was gone. The holoscreen scrambled, searching. A new crack sounded from across the arena, and another alien collapsed. A shot so precise it severed a neural link before the plasma weapon could fire. The man in black had moved. No one had seen him move, yet there he was, already settled, already watching. Panic slithered into the alien ranks. Their formation broke. They tried flanking maneuvers, aerial assaults, synchronized bombardments. Each time, the sniper's patience unraveled them. He let them believe they had the angle, then chose one, always the one, that collapsed the entire strategy. A commander fell, and drones lost cohesion. A scout dropped, and the flanking line crumbled. Each bullet was not just death. It was intention. Whispers spread in the balconies. They're not fighting. They're hunting. On the ground, the humans advanced slowly, methodically. No wasted movement, no wildfire. Each trigger pulled was a death sentence. They conserved ammunition like monks conserve words. Their rifles cracked like punctuation marks in a sermon of inevitability. High Marshal Wiesel thrashed in fury, his claws carving grooves in the dais. More. Bring in the mechs. From the gates thundered war machines, colossal bipedal constructs armed with cannons and shields of shimmering energy. The ground trembled as they fired, craters blooming like open wounds across the arena. The crowd roared, their confidence returning. Surely no crude bullet could pierce those shields. The man in black adjusted his scope. His breathing slowed, the world narrowing to the faint hum of the mech's generator. He waited, eyes fixed not on the machine, but on the flicker of its shield when it fired. A flaw, small, repeating. He exhaled. Crack. A mech shuddered, then collapsed, its core punctured in the half-second its shield had dipped. The arena gasped. Another shot. Another mech crumpled, falling like a giant gutted by invisible steel. The silence now was total. On every screen, the man in black's face appeared, captured by the cameras. Calm, expressionless, not triumphant, not cruel, just inevitable. His lips moved, soft enough that only the feed caught the words. You mocked the rifle. The words echoed in translation across the arena, subtitled in alien tongues. The crowd shivered. Some dignitaries shifted in their seats, claws tapping nervously. This was not performance. This was prophecy. The battle continued, but its outcome had already shifted. The aliens no longer hunted. They hid. They cowered behind cover that offered no safety. They fired wildly at shadows. The humans advanced like patient storm clouds, inevitable and slow. Every crack of a rifle was thunder rolling closer. And then, when half the alien force lay in heaps across the stone, the man in black rose from his position. He did not run. He did not sneak. He stood, tall and steady, rifle in hand, gaze sweeping across the arena. Every camera fixed on him, every alien eye riveted. Marshal Wiesel's voice broke through the silence, strained, desperate. Enough. End the feed. End. But the sniper lifted his rifle, not to the battlefield, but to the viewing balcony. He peered through his scope. The crowd gasped as the lens glinted. The line between hunter and prey was suddenly, irrevocably clear. Aliens in the balconies ducked instinctively, hearts pounding with primal fear, though no bullet had yet been fired. For the first time, the galaxy realized that the contest was not for amusement. It was a warning. The man's finger rested lightly on the trigger, though he did not pull. His voice whispered again, caught by the microphones, carried across the stars. Now you begin to understand. The arena reeked of scorched stone and ionized air, the scent of war machines collapsing under the weight of precision. Smoke curled like ribbons, drifting above heaps of alien corpses strewn across the cracked ground. Where once there had been laughter, there was now a silence brittle and taut, broken only by the faint crack of human rifles marking punctuation in a sermon of inevitability. The human line did not celebrate. No cheers, no raised fists, no triumph. They simply advanced, conserving breath, conserving bullets. They had been here before, not in this arena, not on this poison world, but in spirit, against enemies who believed themselves superior, against odds that seemed unwinnable until patience proved otherwise. The man in black moved like water between stone ridges, his steps deliberate, his eyes never hurried. His rifle rested against his shoulder as though welded there, part of his body rather than a tool. His expression betrayed no thrill, no satisfaction, only composure that felt unnatural amid so much chaos. He breathed evenly, sighted, exhaled, and another alien dropped. Marshal Wiesel, watching from the dais, hissed in mounting panic. His claws dug furrows into the console, his throat sacs pulsing violently. "Deploy reserves," he snarled to aides, his voice cracking against the silence. "Release the swarm. Everything." Gates screeched open. From their depths poured a flood of drones, thousands of them, insectal machines with wings of steel and eyes of burning red. They filled the air like a storm cloud, blotting the artificial sky with their numbers. The crowd found its voice again, screeching, stomping, clapping. Surely no bullets could match such a tide. Surely the storm would devour the patient hunters below. The humans did not run. The first wave struck, lasers stitching lines across the stone. Shields crackled around the drones, a haze of buzzing death descending on flesh and bone. But the man in black raised his rifle, and with one shot pierced the lead drone's core. The machine spiraled into its fellows, detonating mid-air. In an instant, dozens collapsed in a chain of falling wreckage. The humans adjusted, firing not at the swarm itself, but at its rhythm. Each bullet punctured a pattern, breaking the synchronicity of machines that relied on cohesion. The storm faltered, spun into chaos, and what had seemed overwhelming dissolved into fragments. One by one, the hunters picked them apart. Still, the swarm was vast, and exhaustion gnawed at human limbs. Sweat streaked their brows, breaths came heavier, rifles reloaded with mechanical ritual. The man in black spoke between shots, his tone quiet, teacherly, unshaken. "Do not rush. They rush for us. Breathe. Count. Wait." A woman beside him, her uniform torn, cheek bleeding, nodded, steadied, and dropped another drone with a single shot. Another man, knuckles white on his rifle, slowed, breathed, and hit his mark dead center. They were learning not just to shoot, but to embody his patience, to stretch each heartbeat into eternity where a bullet could find its inevitable path. In the balconies, dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. The mockery had curdled into unease, and unease into something darker. The whispers grew. They should have been crushed. Why do they not break? Why do they look so calm? The holoscreens captured the sniper's face again. Dust smeared his cheek, a cut traced his jaw, but his expression had not changed. Eyes steady, gaze cold, as if every movement before him had been pre-written in the ledger of inevitability. The alien crowd found themselves holding their breath as he exhaled, as though the rhythm of their lungs had been chained to his. Marshal Wiesel snarled, voice cracking with desperation. "Enough. Release the war beasts." A new gate boomed. From its cavernous maw thundered creatures bred for terror, hulking predators of bone and sinew, armored with steel plates grafted to flesh, jaws bristling with blades. They roared as they emerged, their cries amplified by sonic enhancers until the very air shuddered. The audience cheered wildly, desperation disguised as delight. The beasts charged. Plasma, fire ricocheted. Drones regrouped. The air filled with noise, fury, chaos. The humans did not cheer. They crouched, waited. And then the sniper shifted his scope not toward the beasts, but toward the handlers hidden in the shadows of the gate. His voice whispered, faint but sharp, "Cut the leash." A single crack. A handler fell, and the beast he commanded faltered. Another crack. Another leash severed. The creatures turned, confused, their roars breaking into dissonance. And then, untethered, they turned not on the humans, but on everything around them. Drones were crushed beneath claws. Plasma bolts struck the armored hides of allies now transformed into foes. The arena dissolved into chaos, but the chaos was not random. It was orchestrated, sculpted by patience into inevitability. The sniper reloaded calmly, murmuring almost to himself. Even monsters run wild when patience chooses where to cut. The human line advanced through the storm, leaving behind only wreckage. By now the crowd was no longer laughing. Many stood silent, others whispered. Some began leaving their seats. The spectacle had turned into something else, something too raw, too precise to be entertainment. It was a demonstration, and its message was simple. Bullets did not miss when wielded with patience, and patience was humanity's oldest weapon. In the control chamber, Marshal Wiesel slammed his fist against the console. His aides shrank away, tails coiling, wings trembling. This cannot stand. If they survive this, the galaxy will whisper. If they whisper, fear will spread. If fear spreads, the Empire. His throat closed, unable to finish the thought. Below, the sniper shifted his rifle once more. He sighted not on soldiers, not on beasts, but on one of the massive shield towers ringing the arena. He exhaled, fired. The bullet struck the generator's core. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the shield above faltered, shimmered, and collapsed. The artificial sky cracked open. Harsh winds screamed into the bowl. The audience gasped as the arena's illusion of control shattered, exposing them all to the poisoned wilderness of the dead planet. The sniper stood, dust whipping around him, coat snapping in the gale. He lowered his rifle, not in exhaustion, but in declaration. "You think patience is weakness," his voice carried across the microphones, flat and soft, yet louder than the storm. "But patience is how we survived beasts larger than your armies, storms fiercer than your plasma, and centuries of your contempt. It is not weakness. It is inevitability." Silence. The words rippled across the galaxy, carried by every holoscreen, burned into every watching mind. The myth of human shooters was no longer myth. It was demonstration, irrefutable, undeniable. Marshal Wiesel felt his throat constrict. His claws trembled. He looked into the arena and realized, with horror, that the man in black had never once looked surprised. Not once. Every move, every counter, every patience-wrought strike had been expected. The sniper tilted his head, just slightly, as if listening to something beyond the storm. He adjusted the strap of his rifle case and whispered, so softly it might have been lost to the wind, but microphones caught it anyway. "They're late." The crowd froze. "Who is late?" whispered dignitaries. "What does he mean?" From the sky above, dark shapes broke through the poisoned clouds. Sleek, angular, and silent, human ships, cloaked until the moment the shields fell. Drop pods detached, glowing trails burning across the arena's shattered ceiling. The sniper smiled, faint and cold. "They thought I came alone." The first pod slammed into the arena floor, doors hissing open. Figures stepped out, armored, armed, eyes steady, rifles ready. Humanity had not sent one sniper. Humanity had sent patience in the shape of a trap. Marshal Wiesel's throat sacs deflated. His aides trembled. The galaxy's laughter had turned into silence, and silence into dread. The wilderness of the dead world had turned against its masters, and now, the wilderness of humanity's patience was about to consume the Empire. The sniper chambered another round, his voice almost tender as he raised his rifle toward the dais where Wiesel stood. Now the lesson begins. The dead world trembled beneath the weight of falling steel. Drop pods slammed into the arena floor one after another, scattering dust and broken stone, their doors peeling open like iron flowers. From them emerged soldiers in matte black armor, rifles shouldered, visors reflecting the sickly sky. They moved in silence, each step measured, every gesture part of a choreography too precise to be improvised. Humanity had arrived, not as jesters for alien amusement, but as hunters who had chosen their ground with patience centuries deep. The crowd screamed in panic. Alien dignitaries stumbled over one another, wings flapping, claws scraping as they tried to flee their balconies. The Colosseum that had moments ago rung with laughter now became cage, every exit blocked by the sudden presence of humanity's shadows. The holoscreens tried to cut the feed, but the sniper had already struck the towers. The signal was theirs now, every word and every silence carried across the galaxy. Marshal Wiesel rose from the dais, rage boiling against dread, his voice cracking like thunder. You dare defile the proving grounds with this treachery? You twist a contest into an ambush. His throat sacs pulsed violently, spittle shining on his teeth. This is dishonor. This is... A crack interrupted him. Not at his head, not at his chest, but at the console before him. The bullet buried itself in the metal, inches from his claws. The chamber froze. Wiesel's words choked into silence. Slowly, painfully, he turned his eyes to the man in black, who stood at the center of the arena, rifle raised, gaze steady through a scope. The voice that carried through the microphones was not thunderous. It was soft, conversational, yet sharper than plasma. You call it treachery. We call it inevitability. You mocked us in your chambers, and then in your arena. You built this world for spectacle, to humiliate, to remind us of our place beneath your claws. But patience, Marshal, patience has its own place, and it always waits for the right shot. The soldiers in black spread across the arena, fanning into positions with ruthless efficiency. They did not rush, did not bellow. They moved as though each step had been rehearsed 100 times, as though the entire battlefield belonged to them. The alien champions who had survived the earlier slaughter braced themselves, forming ranks of scaled and feathered bodies, plasma rifles sparking with desperate power. They had numbers. They had technology. But already, their hands trembled, their eyes flickered, because the inevitability had been shown, and inevitability corrodes courage faster than fire. The battle began with a sound too quiet for such devastation, the synchronized cracks of human rifles. Not a storm, not a flood, just clean notes of thunder measured against silence. With every shot, a commander fell, a weapon was silenced, a formation broke. The aliens fired back, flooding the air with green plasma, but the humans did not need to match the torrent. They chose. They always chose. And every choice was death. The beasts still rampaging from the severed leashes turned on their former masters with renewed savagery, tearing into alien lines. Drones buzzed erratically, their formations broken, collapsing against precise bullets that found their cores with casual cruelty. The air filled with smoke and screams, yet the sniper remained calm, his face lit only by the cold gleam of inevitability. He shifted his aim from battlefield to balcony, where dignitaries cowered behind gilded railings. His scope swept lazily, never firing, yet every alien ducked as though death already whistled through the air. That was the truest weapon, not the bullet itself, but the knowledge that when he chose to fire, nothing would stop it. Marshal Wiesel staggered back, claws trembling. His aides babbled, pleading for orders, but his voice had broken. For the first time in his long rule, he understood what it meant to be prey. The sniper's voice cut through the din, unhurried, unshaken. We never came to play your game. The proving grounds were yours, yes. But the wilderness is always ours. You mocked our rifles. You mocked our patience. You mocked our silence. Now you see what silence hides. At his signal, the soldiers in black shifted. Not randomly, not chaotically, but in a perfect circle around the alien army, like jaws closing around the throat of prey. The aliens fought harder, desperation lending strength. But every burst of plasma was answered by a single crack that ended it. Every advance faltered. Every roar ended in silence. The circle tightened, and panic bled into frenzy. From above, the human ships revealed themselves fully, breaking their cloaks. They hovered in perfect stillness, black leviathans against a storm-racked sky, their weapons silent but primed. The galaxy watched through stolen feeds, realizing that if this was what humanity did for demonstration, what could they do in war? One by one, alien dignitaries begged for the feed to be cut, but none could. The sniper had severed the control towers, had waited for this moment, had chosen it. Every word, every shot was broadcast. Every witness was a messenger. Fear would travel faster than any ship. Marshal Wiesel's rage crumbled into dread. He tried to rally his voice, tried to conjure the arrogance that once commanded the galaxy. "You cannot undo the Empire," he rasped. "We are infinite. We are eternal. You are few, fragile, fleeting." The sniper's scope aligned on him. Through the magnification, Wiesel saw his own trembling reflection in that calm, black eye. The voice that answered him was almost kind. "And yet, Marshal, it only takes one bullet to end eternity." Crack. The crowd shrieked. The bullet did not strike Wiesel, but the pillar beside his head, exploding stone and showering him with dust. He fell to his knees, shaking. The shot had been mercy. Mercy itself was more terrifying than death. The battle waned. Alien weapons clattered to the ground as soldiers broke and fled. Beasts collapsed under exhaustion. Drones crashed into useless heaps. The silence that followed was not peace, but surrender. The man in black lowered his rifle, strapped it across his back, and walked through the ruin. His boots crushed ash and glass, his suit dusted with blood and smoke. Soldiers in black parted for him, forming a path as though he were not simply their sniper, but their inevitability given form. He climbed the dais slowly, unhurried, until he stood above Marshal Wiesel, who cowered on his knees, throat sacs deflated, claws trembling. The sniper regarded him with neither hatred nor triumph. His voice was a whisper, yet it carried into every microphone, every feed, every mind watching across the stars. "You thought patience was weakness. You thought silence was submission. You thought a bullet was primitive. Now you understand. Patience chooses the moment. Silence hides the hunter, and the bullet," he paused, eyes steady. "The bullet does not miss." Wiesel whimpered, unable to answer. Around them, the dignitaries sobbed or fled, their illusions shattered. Across the galaxy, billions watched, and billions understood. Humanity was not entertainment. Humanity was not relic. Humanity was the hunter that had walked quietly in the dark too long. The sniper turned, walking away from the marshal, without firing the final shot. That was the cruelest inevitability, that Wiesel would live to carry the weight of silence, heavier than any grave. The soldiers regrouped, ships above descending to retrieve them. The arena lay broken, its towers shattered, its myths burned. The proving grounds had become a graveyard not of humans, but of arrogance. The wilderness had turned, and it belonged to humanity. As he reached the gate, the sniper paused. Dust swirled, smoke curled, silence pressed like a shroud. He glanced once over his shoulder, toward the cameras that still streamed across the stars. His lips curved faintly, almost tenderly, as though offering the galaxy a parting lesson. One shot, one kill, always. The feed cut to black.